Hey there. Normally, gaming is a lot of fun, and we enjoy it. And sometimes, gaming is an avenue for therapy and for understanding and empathy. And I just wanted to warn folks that some of the subjects and content that are going to be talked about in this discussion might be you know. Problematic as far as if you've had any experience with suicidal ideation or self harm or any abuse related to religion. So I just wanted to give everybody a warning that it takes place. I'll put it on the screen as well, so you can and kind of stop and determine if you want to keep going. Also, there are some links below for supports, and they'll pop up on the screen as well in case you are experiencing any of that. And just hope for the best for all of you out there. And I really appreciate Paco sharing some of this important information, because I think it is good to share. And but just wanted to warn everybody ahead of time if they are watching this. So enjoy the interview. Hi, welcome to the Daiku Podcast. I'm Gary Snow. Today, I'm joined by Paco Garcia, the host of GMS Magazine, which features reviews of tabletop games along with interviews by creators and industry experts. Today, we're going to learn more about Paco's journey, along with a brand new creation of his own called Closet, a gay awareness-raising game for straight people. Paco, welcome.
Hi, thank you very, very much indeed for having me, Gary. I was really looking forward to this.
Well, and I've been looking forward to it too, because I've been watching your channel for years now. I'm a big fan of it. You do like really good analysis of like games. I'm not much of a board gamer, but like some of your reviews, I go, I want to start it into board games. I just don't have the shelf space to actually get into it. But so you keep tempting me with that. But all your interviews and all your kind of industry analysis, I just absolutely love. So if you are watching this or listening to this podcast, and if you haven't heard of GMS Magazine, I'm going to put all the links in below, and go check it out, because Paco does a great job with his stuff, and it's top-notch, good quality. And we'll talk a little bit more about like your whole process, because I'm super curious about it. But we're also going to be talking about your own game, Closet, which I'm excited to kind of talk about the creation behind it, and why you're doing it, and why you created it, and how it came to be. But first, as always, we kind of start with your own journey and how you got into this crazy little hobby of ours.
Wow, it's a very interesting question, because it was a very, very long time ago. I know that I don't look it, but I am really old by now, at 52, and I got into role-playing games first and foremost before I knew what role-playing games were. I found out about Dungeons and Dragons and Dragonlance purely by accident. When Dragons of Autumn Twilight came into my life, by chance, I had no idea what the book was all about, but it was at the time when I was going through a really, really dark period of my young life. And I saw this book with this beautiful cover that I was like, oh, I'm going to get into this. And I began to read the book, and I read it cover to cover like 4 times in a row, because for the first time in many years, I was happy. And then a few years later, some friends said, "Oh,
if I could interrupt you, which title of Dragonlance was that? Like, because I knew of Dragonlance. To be honest, I never read any of the books.
It was Dragon of Autumn Twilight. It was the first of the trilogy that Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman published. And it arrived in Spain, I believe it was in 1985. It was when it was translated and published. It is highly recommended. I mean, to be honest, it hasn't aged bad. All things considered, I mean, I sometimes I read some fantasy from the 80s, and it's like, okay, but no, actually, that trilogy is still very entertaining. I gave it to one of my nieces a couple of years ago as a Christmas present, and when she finished reading the book, it was like, I want to know what happens next. She was really, really interested. So if you want to get into light fantasy, Dungeons and Dragons style, Dragons of Autumn Twilight is still, I think, a pretty good read.
Right, sorry, I interrupted you there. Sorry.
No, that's totally fine. And then I found out some people when I spoke to them about, oh, I read these things. Oh, that's from the game. I thought, what? The what? Yeah, there is a game, and you can play the characters. And can I play? And that was it. They invited me in to play Vecna Lives, which was like, looking back, it was a really too much. And then a friend said to me, "Oh, we have to play Lord of the Rings." I was like, "Okay, fine, let's play Lord of the Rings." It was perhaps one of the worst gaming experiences of my life. It was horrible, really bad, because it was at the time when there was this thing about the GMs versus the players. And of course, the GM always wins because it's the GM. And it kind of reminded me of when my granddad taught me to play chess when I was 7 or 8 years old, and he would never, ever let me win. So I ended up hating chess because of the frustration. So after that, I was like, oh, do I really want to keep
And was
playing
that
this?
the MERPS version
Yes.
that you were playing? So like this is the Rollmaster, and it's funny, those books, like, because I was a big Lord of the Rings fan, and those books you would read, you'd want to like live in the world, and so you'd buy MERPS and you'd go, whoa, this doesn't kind of feel the same. And then the rules themselves were so crunchy that like you, as a young person, I couldn't grok them.
For me, it was really hard. But what really was hard for me was the fact that I was so tied to the dice that it was really impossible to do anything that was really epic. I thought of Lord of the Rings. I had already read them, and I always thought about these epic characters with bigger than life kind of presence and abilities that would allow you to do some really, really cool stuff. And the game, perhaps because of the game or how it was run by my friend, it didn't really feel like that. It was really frustrating that you would find a couple of big lizards, on the side of the road, and with 2 munches, that's it. You were toast. So that Aragorn sort of character that you wanted to nurture died so quickly, so many times, that it was like, do I really want to go through this? But I stuck with it. Then we continued playing the Vecna Lives with a different group, and that was a much, much different experience. And then Dark Sun came out, and I know it's a very problematic setting, but at the time it was like, it just blew my mind. It was absolutely beautiful. It was different. It was brutal. It had some incredibly original ideas at the time, and I just delved into it. And I fell in love with role-playing games, and I've been playing ever since. It's been the one true consistent hobby since I was, I don't know, perhaps 16, 17.
And I agree with you about Dark Sun. Like, that was one of the most unique settings because, like, you Lord of the Rings and you kind of, and all the Conan stuff had been built up, and that one at that time was like so unique compared to anything that we had seen kind of in the fantasy world. Not to say that they didn't get inspiration from all sorts of different places, as many games do, but as far as like actual playing a role-playing game in D&D, that was quite a unique setting. And that was like right, I think, when like a lot more games were coming into the world, and like people were starting to get more interested in designing unique and different types of games, and Dark Sun was right up there with them. But going back a little bit, as far as like growing up in Spain, did you have that same kind of cultural feel now that you've been like within the hobby for like many years, and you've probably seen like Stranger Things and the way those kids kind of grew up with it? Was it kind of the same experience in Spain, or was it different?
No, it was the same, I think. The only difference is that we weren't exposed to as many games because games needed to be translated. Translation is expensive, and publishing at the time was also very, very expensive. So what we were exposed to was also a myriad games that were created in our country. Things that people would write because it's cheaper to actually pay somebody to write than it is to translate. But the camaraderie was definitely there. It was so easy to just see somebody. Like I was in my store, I used to run a photography shop, and somebody would come in to photocopy some character sheets or some things, some tables, and immediately just chat. And a few days later, you were playing together. That was it. It was that easy to get together. And it was wonderful. It was the first time in my life when I was able to make friends without being this awkward gay kid that everybody thought it was weird. So it was absolutely amazing. Then the whole thing blew off when there was a murder. Some two kids, kids, they were young adults in the early 20s, decided to kill a man who was waiting on the bus to go home after work in the very early hours of the morning. And the press, because they found a killer, a book for a live role-playing game called Killer. In their place, the police found that. The press got hold of it, and suddenly it became the RPG murder.
Mm-hmm.
I literally had the police come into my store to let me know that they have been given orders to keep an eye on any RPG group they knew of.
Wow.
And it was horrific to have to go through that. But just like with the Satanic Panic, for us, that made us gel even more, because suddenly all role-playing gamers, we had a common enemy, which was the rest of society that wants to think that we are potential murderers. So that only made us become even closer, and we would share more games and we would play more games just out of revelry of saying, we are not going to kill anyone. This is not why these people did it. So it was, the 90s were an interesting time, I have to say.
How long did it take for that kind of stigma to kind of go away?
Ever. I don't think it ever went away. I left Spain to go to the UK in 1998, and from that moment I kind of lost track of what was going on. I knew that an awful lot of publishers closed down because after the appearance of Magic the Gathering, there was a massive crisis, and the shops that we used to go to buy RPGs, they became shops where you could buy Magic the Gathering.
Mm-hmm.
And loads of companies just went bust very quickly. Also, because of all the problems that TSR was going through at the time, it was harder and harder to get Dungeons and Dragons, which was at the time the biggest game in Spain. So the whole thing kind of collapsed, but the stigma has remained to the point that when I came back to Spain to live in Spain in 2016, 2015, people still remember that. People still thought of us as these potentially dangerous weirdos, even though the whole industry had evolved into something else. But yeah, there's still some people who think about it in a kind of, this is weird way.
So confirm with me, this photography store that you were running, and it also had role-playing games for sale in it, or just the photocopying?
Oh, no. My parents absolutely despised the thought that I was playing role-playing games. Okay. In fact, when I left home, my parents literally burned my whole collection on a pile.
Oh,
they
wow.
Just put everything and set it on fire when I left, because they did not want role-playing games in their home.
Wow. And when did you find that out?
Well, I found that out the next time that I visited, and I thought, where are my books? And I asked my parents, I said, oh, the gardener burned them by accident. And I said, the who did what by what? Yeah, because we put them over there in the shed, and when he was burning, all the compost and everything, he thought that it was for burning, so he burnt all the books. And then I asked my brothers, and my brother said, no, they burnt them because of, they thought it was satanic kind of black magic shit. So
were they I know Catholicism was quite prominent in Spain. Were they kind of devout Catholics?
To be honest, it's a mix of both. It's a mix of Catholicism, superstition, and my parents being complete and utter idiots.
Wow. So that must have felt like a big loss for you. I can only imagine that. I was actually stupid myself. I actually ended up selling my role-playing games, so I only have myself to be stupid. And
at least you didn't destroy them.
Yeah.
If they had given away those books to a library or to school or something, I would have been angry. But at least I would know that somebody was enjoying them. But for me, the thought of burning a book, I just can't fathom the idea. So it really felt like a betrayal. And it felt, because role-playing games literally saved my life at the time, it really felt like you really don't care about me. So if you don't care about something that is so precious, so dear to me, how can you tell me that you care about me? That's how it felt at the time.
Can we go into a little bit of like how they saved your life, as far as like sure. What they brought to your life that kind of made you so they endeared themselves to you, and like the act of playing itself helped?
For that we need to go back to Dragons of Autumn Twilight. At the time, I was a very camp effeminate kid who was being bullied at school quite a lot for being very obviously gay. It was obvious to everybody but myself. And I was being abused by one of the priests at school, who I was deeply in love with, and he was using that to be able to stay close to me and do things that he should have never done, that brought very, very conflicted feelings to myself. And I really wanted to die. I numerous times, you see how stupid children who are under the heavy influence of religion can be. I used to live on a 4th floor, very high. So I would lean my body over a window in the hopes that I would slip and fall and die. Because if I threw myself through the window, I wouldn't be able to go to heaven, because people who kill themselves don't go to heaven. That's what I was told at school. And I didn't want to go to hell. But if it was an accident, then everything would end and I would go to heaven. But that wasn't working for some reason. My shoes were sticking to the floor. Thank God for that. And the next step was actually going into the bathroom, into the bathtub with a blade and dig it into my skin. And then I just had a second of lucidity, and I thought, I think I need to give this one more chance, because of music, which I love, and because of the friends that perhaps I will be able to make one day. So I got out. And the following day, this packet arrived. There was a company called the Reader's Circle in Spain, and it was a magazine that you had an awful lot of books to choose from, and every 2 months you had to buy a book. They were cheaper than buying them in the stores, so that was the way it went. And if you didn't order any book, then you would get the editor's choice. The editor's choice was Dragons of Autumn Twilight. So when I received that, I opened this, because I was an avid reader at the time, well, still am, and I saw that cover, and it was like, whoa, what is this? And for the first time in many years, I was reading that book and I was happy. I wanted to stay alive one more day to be able to read it. And then another day, and another day, and another day. And when that book finished, and I read it again, and finished and read it again, then I went on to buying more books that would make me happy. So I ended up buying pretty much the whole collection of Choose Your Own Adventure, the original one. And that's how Dungeons and Dragons saved my life. If another book had arrived and I hadn't decided to read it, I don't know if I would have tried to, let my body fall over the window again, or perhaps just finish slicing my wrists. I don't know, but I like to think that D&D saved my life.
Well, I do appreciate you sharing that, because not everybody comes into D&D like the same way, and the fact that, like, I mean, I feel awful that you had to go through that. I know, just even in my own realm of life, I know a lot of folks that have been residential school survivors in Canada, which were run by the Catholic churches. Like, they were like, meant to take the Indian out of the kid, as the government kind of specified, and there was a lot of abuse that went on by priests in those institutions, and so it's just challenging space. And so I appreciate you sharing that, and hopefully your story can help others that might find themselves in positions similar to yours, not necessarily the same, but the feeling of hopelessness, and maybe that they can find something to hold on to and support that.
I hope so too. But one of the reasons why I like to tell my story is because, one, of course, the main message is wait until tomorrow. If you're thinking about doing something extreme, do it tomorrow. Don't do it today. And tomorrow, if you would still want to do it, then wait and do it the following day. Wait tomorrow. But the most important thing for me also is, you never know when the work that you write, the work that you publish, the work that other people read can save a life. So this is why I am so adamant that if people are thinking about writing their tale, their story, their novel, their role-playing game, and they don't know if they should do it, the answer is yes, yes, yes. Go ahead and do it. Because exactly the same that for me was Margaret Wise and Tracy Hickman that saved my life, and Larry Elmore with that beautiful cover, maybe what you write can be so important to somebody that it will save their life in the future. So don't hold back. Your work matters a lot.
And I don't want to skip too far ahead now, but I'm thinking, your game Closet is going to probably have similar capacity to make people see things in a different light, and perhaps have a better understanding. So I'm excited to kind of get into that aspect, because I think it probably can do a lot of good, and so I hate to almost kind of steer us down the path of your podcast first, as far as when did you did you play role-playing games in the UK as well, or you kept on through the hobby throughout all the years? And at what point did you go, whoa, this is more than just a hobby? And maybe you can tell us like what kind of games you were playing, and then how did it all come to be that you started GMS Magazine?
Well, okay, GMS Magazine started in a different way. The first thing I did when I came to the UK, I was meant to be living in the UK just for a few months. I went for a contract for a company called Viewpoint Data Labs at the time, doing 3D modeling and 3D production. And I was meant to be there for only a few months. But when I decided, because I found my current husband, that I wanted to stay, the first thing I did was find a gaming group. It worked in Spain, maybe it will work also in the UK. And I found a gaming group, and we used to get together, and we had great time, and we played a lot of D&D and some heroes. which I hated. And then we played some Torg, which I thought was really weird. And then I moved down to Brighton. And in Brighton, I found a couple of groups, and that was brilliant. And we played all sorts of things, all sorts. Mailing lists became, the old Yahoo mailing lists became very popular, so we used to get in touch. And gaming live was very good. It was very, very good. And then podcasts came along, and I started to listen to some podcasts, and there weren't that very many at the time. And I heard some podcasts with some interviews. And me, being sometimes the arrogant asshole I am, I thought, I can do this better. These questions are just so ridiculous, this is what everybody asks. So I thought, okay, how does one make a podcast? I had no idea whatsoever. So I thought, okay, let's get Skype, let's buy a microphone, and let's try. And I loved it. I absolutely loved the experience. I love the experience of talking to people about games, being able to ask any question I wanted to ask. I have to say, at the time, I was already practicing as a psychotherapist. And as a psychotherapist, you have to ask a lot of questions. There's one thing that's crucial to being a psychotherapist, especially if you specialize in systemic approach, and is that you have to be infinitely curious about your clients. So I'm kind of an infinitely curious person. If you tell me about a topic that I know nothing about, it will immediately is like, what? Let's learn. And I have to go and learn. So it was wonderful to be able to ask people all sorts of things that interest me. And I just did it. Then I continued with the YouTube channel because, I wanted to show the games that I was playing. My husband thought, I actually like video production, so why don't we buy a camera? And then why don't we buy some lights? And then, look, this black magic thing, why don't we buy? It's very expensive. Okay. We went up and up and up and up and up and up and up, buying things and producing podcasts and videos.
Well, for those that maybe have not seen your channel before, the production quality is top notch. I look at my background and I'm like, like it's kind of junky and it's got like all sorts of crap in the background. But yours, you've got your shelf so nicely displayed, and you've got your table, and I'm always like, how does he do it? Like, it's so good. And so you started off audio, but then you switched to video, and then like black magic, and so like, are you doing video switching and all that kind of stuff on the fly?
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Well, we have a long time ago, I decided that I wasn't going to be making any money out of YouTube. It's just not something that I am interested enough to invest enough time to do. And also, I don't like the idea that at any point YouTube changes their algorithm and that's it, you're toast. So I don't want to work in that kind of fragile environment. But both Martin and myself absolutely love being in front of the camera. So when I moved to Spain, we decided to invest, and we have a whole flat. We bought a whole flat with 3 bedrooms and the sitting room and the kitchen, so we could set up the studio. So again, little by little, it was a very inexpensive flat at the time. Now I don't think you could, but at the time we only paid 25,000 euros for it. So it's not that we are loaded. We don't have loads of money, but that's what we invest the money that we have. So we bought that, created a whole environment in the sitting room, and then in the adjacent room, we had a Blackmagic system with 4 4K cameras, 1, 2, 3, 4 mini deck studios. So we can be recording several cameras at the same time as we do the real-time editing. So what we wanted was to be able to produce very quickly, because as you know, post-production takes a lot of time. So we wanted to be able to be really fast, not having to spend, another day doing everything. So we record in real time, and then Martin can add some B-roll here and there as and when is needed.
Well, I'm very jealous because like I'm adept enough to know that like I don't like my setup, but I'm not willing to kind of get it to the next level. So but I know I could, and I see yours and I get jealous. But then at the same time, like you said, it's either post-production or pre-production. Like, where do you put your time and energy and efforts and that kind of stuff? But it looks great.
Thank you. I mean, we really, at the time when I started doing it, I really wanted it to become a hub for all the local geeks to be able to come and record their podcasts and their shows in there. But that, because of the way the Spanish geeks think, it backfired insanely. And eventually just thought, you know what, I'm just going to enjoy myself. And it's my little space, it's when I feel low or when I feel anything that's not positive, I go to that place, I close the door, I look at the shelf, get a book, start the camera, and I'm very, very happy. So it's my happy place.
And when did you get into the board games? Because it sounds like, your story is like very heavy with role-playing games, but then I see like a lot of board games that you've reviewed. When did you kind of like make that transition?
Well, I wanted to do both because for me, gaming, especially, to be honest, board games more than role-playing games. Role-playing games is more about the story, where board games for me is more about the social interaction with the other players. So I realized that there were board games when I saw the Battlestar Galactica board game. And I looked at that in the shop and I thought, this exists? I love Battlestar Galactica and this exists. So I bought the game and I thought, holy cow, I really want more of this. And then I realized, through the Dice Tower and other podcasts, the Spiel, that there were podcasts about this. And I found out that Spiel, the convention, existed. I had no idea. And I saw so many incredible creative ideas, and I met so many people playing board games that I thought, why can't I like both? I really like this. Also, because I was working in e-learning at the time, well, still am, I'm an instructional designer. I thought this as an education tool could be so perfect. There are so many things that could be used to teach people other things. And I just fell in love with them. And I decided that I wanted to cover them too and talk to board game designers and just do some cross-pollination.
Are we talking about the old like 1970s Battlestar Galactica board game or the newer? Was there a newer one? Okay.
Yeah, the newer one. I know that some people are going to think, Paco, what are you thinking? But I just loved the Battlestar Galactica reboot. I thought it was absolutely brilliant.
Oh, very cool. And you talked about the socialness, and I was saying to you before we started recording, my shelf have so many role-playing game books in that I can't even think about getting into minis, and I can't think about getting into board games because it's just I don't have space for that. And so, how big is your collection right now that you've got? How much room do you have in that your studio?
Okay, I have in the region of 500 board games. So wow. It's a good collection, but it's not mega huge. I know people who've got literally 3,000 board games. In role-playing games, I think it's about 1,200, give or take. So I have like is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then the closet in the corridor, shelves completely full, top to bottom, of role-playing games.
I'm pretty sure that IKEA is basically staying afloat from role-playing game and board game people buying Calyx shelves at this point.
And Billy's. And I tell you something, if at some point, I keep saying this, and I'm sure Sure, they have this already designed and they're waiting. If at some point IKEA is under any kind of financial struggle, if they release a collection of gaming tables, that will be enough to refloat them and bring them to new highs. I think if they manage to do that, every single geek would have at least one of those tables.
Yeah, for sure. That is a good point. And if they do it, we're gonna like sue them for your
Yeah.
idea.
Yes.
And so you started the channel and your role playing game collection. And do you have like when you started rebuilding, like do you have these favorites, or did you like repurchase them after like that incident? And like, do you have these like do you have a shelf of just your favorites that like make you feel like a kid again?
Well, one of the things that I focused on was to replenish or to replace my Dark Sun collection. So at the time, eBay was like heaven, because over the early noughties, at least in the UK, you could buy a ton of RPGs very inexpensively. But also, I was suddenly exposed to materials that I had no idea existed. 99% of role-playing games that were published in the US and the UK never arrived in Spain. So suddenly it was like, whoa, what is this? I didn't know about so many Call of Cthulhu supplements that had been published, or about some of the Vampire the Masquerade that had been published. So many. So I kind of became some sort of, reincarnation of Diogenes and began to hoard every RPG that was inexpensive that I could get my hand on. And the rest of history, So do I have a favorite? I think my Dark Sun collection is probably my pride and joy.
Well, that's great that you could like find that. And at that time, like I know like when 5e kind of hit in Stranger Things and it kind of had a resurgence, and then all of a sudden there's a lot of folks that were like going back to eBay and going, oh, I remember playing. And so you probably got in on the ground floor, so to speak, as far as same with your housing type of thing. You got in before it got super crazy. And I know like there's some games that are like so rare now that they're like crazy expensive.
Yeah, I know. It's weird that I look at some of the stuff I have, and then I see how much money it's meant to be accruing. Like some of the early editions of Doctor Who, or this game called Nobilis. That they are like 500-600 euros. And it's like, Willa, do you mean really? Am I gonna be able to retire out of selling these things when I get to the right age? Wow, it's fantastic.
I always tell my family, like, do not just like donate my games to the thrift store if I die.
I don't know what I will do with my games when I die. I still haven't decided who's going to keep it. Perhaps, I think probably Chris Sims's daughter. I think she will love it.
That's nice. And so like how long have you now been doing the video podcast? Like you went from audio to video, and how long has it been now?
Video podcast, I think about 5 years, is when I decided that, what's the point of not recording the video? Also, I think is a good thing that people can see who they're talking with. And I thought, YouTube is good for reviews, then YouTube is good for podcasts also.
Well, you were probably ahead of the curve, because I think what happened is like a lot of audio podcasts either just stayed audio podcasts, but I think more and more like podcasts are, the same. I kind of had that realization that like you just record the video, and then, I mean, it's easy listening. Even if you don't watch the video, it's, listenable. So you were probably ahead of the curve on that. But so since you started, and all your guests and all your reviews and that kind of thing, what changes have you seen? And I know like me and you have chatted before about like the algorithm and like how sometimes it can be cruel. And, I think it was probably like maybe 3-4 months ago, a lot of the big YouTubers were starting to kind of complain that their views were down, and like they were told start a new channel and all those types of things. So what's your take on that? Like where either like from a like macro perspective and then a micro perspective on your approach to it.
Okay, my perspective is I've always felt really impotent, powerless against the big machine. I have always managed to have a very small community of people who do listen to me. I've never been able to break it big. It was never my intention. It would have been nice, but it was never my intention. But I've always managed to survive because I've always felt I had enough support to make it worth it, to continue. I reckon an awful lot of people are realizing that it doesn't matter how much effort you put into anything. Neither YouTube or TikTok or Facebook is ever going to reward you for the work that you do unless they get an even bigger reward for the work that you do. And if they want to change, which is what's happening, if they want to change the number of creators and give space to different type of creators because they think you are too old in this platform, then they're going to do it and you can do nothing about it. So I think an awful lot of people are going to realize that our work as YouTubers, as podcasters, is ephemeral. It can go anytime. So the trend for me is stick to your fans. Give them a service, give them something that they really want to enjoy. It is a lot better for me to have 1,000 dedicated followers, friends, because you really have to be friends with the people that follow you. It's not good enough to say, I'm the YouTuber, you're my follow, just follow. No. Listen to them, interact with them, talk to them. It's a lot better to have a small number of followers that really are interested in you because you're interested in them than having 5 million who don't give a shit about you. So I reckon that what's going to happen is that we're going to go through smaller communities, very tight, very well knit, and people will follow as many of those communities as they can. But the age of the multi-million subscriber being the important thing, I think that's going to be over in the next 5 years.
And the algorithm like itself can kind of be cruel because ultimately like YouTube or TikTok or whatever platform you're talking about, they want their cut, and like it's all about attention. So they base their algorithm upon how long people are paying attention, and so therefore they want their ad revenue from it. And so as an example, I don't really monetize my channel, and I was really happy when I got over the 1,000 subscriber because then I could turn monetization off because I just wanted to use it as a broadcasting platform and I didn't want my viewers to actually have to sit through ads. So I was like, good, finally I'm done with it. But I often go, I think that's actually working against me because YouTube doesn't make money from me. Like they only make money from the monetization. So the algorithm, I think, somewhat suppresses because they want to make their money. So they suppress channels that don't monetize.
Correct. They say they don't. If you tell them, yeah, exactly. But I'm sorry, I have absolutely zero reason to believe anything that Google says from that point of view. I just don't believe it. Because the other thing is, if they really value the length of time that people are watching your videos, they would invest more time in finding who your audience is. But they don't. They simply, if they push your video to, I don't know, 1,000 people, and out of that 1,000 people, only 50 watch more than 5 minutes, then they will think, oh, sorry, those videos are crap. They are not good. Instead of thinking, well, let's take a look at who are those 50 people. Let's find people who are like them and then show them those videos. And they don't do that. They just don't do that. So it's a bit meh.
And even like, and I'll give YouTube their flowers. Of all the platforms, it's probably still the best out of all the platforms as far as like being catering to subscribers and like you putting in the work that has like a long tail, and people will still find your videos like, you know, years later type of thing. Whereas I feel bad for people like on TikTok that they are absolutely driven to make new content, because whatever you put out is going to like drop off a cliff in 48 hours. And after it drops off a cliff, then you make new stuff because nobody's going to watch any of your stuff anymore.
No, correct. And TikTok doesn't allow for the same search abilities and capabilities. TikTok doesn't suggest content that could be similar. They just show you things based on what you've already watched, but it's not to the same level. And if you wanted to find any of my videos, YouTube makes it fairly easy to find. TikTok, not a chance.
Yeah. And I hear all the time that TikTok's become like a bigger search engine. I'm like, their search is so hideously bad. But young Gen Zs seem to like it. So go figure. I don't understand it. But even though I'm on TikTok.
Yeah, me too. But I no.
Yeah, I don't get it. As far as like you've seen now over the years, you've seen lots of ups and downs within the industry, aside from like our YouTube little niche and sharing. Where do you see the hobby at as far as like, you know, we're into, you know, since Trump imposed tariffs, and like you were talking about Magic the Gathering earlier, and it reminded me, like I was like really into role-playing games, and the Magic the Gathering came out, and I was just like actually really angry at Magic the Gathering because it kind of stole the thunder away from role-playing games. And then the role-playing games like went through like a really dark period, to me at least, for like a number of years, and it just never gained the prominence that it's my favorite hobby, obviously. And I think about where we're at now, like board games have been really hit hard because most of them are produced in China. Role-playing games maybe not so much, but there's still a lot of books have been produced in China. So like creators are scrambling to figure out how they can produce them, say in the States, or like all sorts of other alternative solutions and that kind of thing. Where do you have probably a better lens at it than I do? Where do you see things going and happening?
It's a very difficult thing. Firstly, I would like to say sometimes we put an awful lot of blame on the fall of all role-playing games on Magic the Gathering. I don't know. I know that it affected a lot of role-playing games, okay? But I also need to say it did help maintain an awful lot of shops open. So I don't think we should forget that. But also, I think it's important to think that role-playing games didn't really fail. Dungeons and Dragons did. And that is what brought pretty much the whole world of role-playing games to its knees. You know, it's like if tomorrow Google disappears, the world of search engines would suffer greatly, because there are other search engines out there, but they are not as popular. And I think that is what happens with RPGs at the time. D&D collapsed, and the remaining games weren't big enough to attract enough attention to keep the industry going at the same level that it was going. Then we were going through the PDF kind of beginnings, and people were, how is this going to work? What about piracy? So, but I don't like the idea of blaming, you know, Magic the Gathering as the main thing that brought role-playing games down. I think the fall of TSR is what really triggered the whole thing. As to what's going to happen, I think what's going to happen is that we're going to see fewer large companies being able to survive, and we're going to see more indie games being produced. But also, we're going to see more companies from outside the US getting more relevance, because the world of role-playing games, and some people are going to hate me for saying this, but it's been very US-centric. If you were in the United States, you had way more chances of succeeding because it's your biggest market, and Americans like to buy what Americans perceive as being Americans. And with Americans, I mean US people. So um, companies that could have had ginormous success because they didn't look American enough, they didn't get enough attention. And now that we're seeing what I was talking about earlier, if you manage to get 1,000 dedicated people that will buy everything that you do, you can be kept afloat. Anything else is going to be a bonus. So I reckon that we're going to see a lot more companies like that, little companies like Black Armada, like Caesar Inc., Ace Games from Italy. They are people who are doing well, and that they are tiny with some fantastic games that people love, and that's how they are surviving. So fewer big companies and more variation and variety of games is what I foresee.
Yeah, and I mean, I definitely agree with you. I think it reminds me. I've used this analogy. I don't know if it's really good, but it's almost like when the comet came and killed off the dinosaurs, and then the little squirrel and monkeys came out that were burrowed away, and they're like, "Oh, here's some fertile ground without dinosaurs here that we can actually survive in." And so I kind of see us indie folks actually being able to find some fertile ground with unique games and unique approaches. And I think the creativity in the space has never been better. With like every time I'm like on Kickstarter or like on social media, I'm like, wow, that's so cool. There's just so many awesome things being created and so many unique perspectives and broader perspectives and diverse perspectives. It's just an amazing time to be in the hobby.
Yes, I think we've never had it better, ever.
And speaking of interesting and diverse games, let's talk about your game, Closet.
Yes.
So, give us a little bit of what made you decide to make this game. And we already kind of alluded to, your background and history, and like how did this come from your soul?
Well, as you know, I am very much an activist on social media, and I always try to make my podcast as diverse as I possibly can. And I am a big, massive proponent of equal rights for LGBTQI plus community, because we are being so attacked right now from everywhere that it feels like we are really going back to a time when we should never go back. Now, I think there are perhaps three types of people out there. Some of them are allies. Some people are people who just don't have a clue of what we're talking about. And then we have assholes who are just doesn't matter what you tell them, they're never going to be neutral or your friends. Simple as. And we do have a fair number of days, like coming out day or Pride Month, that sort of thing, Visibility Day, anti-homophobia Day. But I have never seen anything that makes it accessible to understand what are the processes that we have to go through because of the way that society works around us. So I am in love with journaling games. I really enjoy. I've been into them for the last couple of years, and I really enjoy playing them. And I thought, how about I tell about my experience and about all the game and experiences through a game, so people can write their own story about what it is like to come out of the closet. Because coming out is not just a matter of going out there one day and say, hey, just so you know, I'm gay. It's a lot more complex and complicated than that. It's a lot more nuanced than that. So I thought, okay, how do I make this into a game?
And so just kind of going through the structure of it, what who is this targeted towards? Like you mentioned straight folks that are like maybe confused as to what somebody coming out of the closet might look like.
The people I would like to play this game are people who are curious and are willing to try to understand what it is like to come out, what it is like to be us. I want people who want to exercise a little bit of empathy to try this game. And to be honest, it would be great if some of our detractors also tried it, but with a genuine mind open to see what it is like, even if they still end up, hating us or deciding that, whatever. But at least have an idea as to what we go through when we need to come out at different ages. Have a go.
And so the structure of it, in here, you need a deck of cards, a D4, and other polyhedral dice. Yes. And I should note for folks that are watching this video, part of this is like an early version. So yes. Paco's gonna, it's a work in progress, but we're good enough to get a sneak peek at it. And then walk us through like how the game plays out. So firstly, create the world around you.
Yes, there are many ways to do this. Well, two ways to do this. One is you decide where you want to play. Do you want to play in your town or in a big city? Do you want to play where? And of course, I will recommend playing around you, taking a look at what surrounds you. Where's your town? How do you feel people would react to gay people? Is it a very conservative place? Is it a very open place? Look around you. Because at the end of the day, this is very much an exercise on understanding, awareness, and empathy. So going around you will make you understand what people you may know are going through. Then I thought you need to create somebody. Rather than playing as yourself, which you could, but you need to create a person, a character. I thought that also that would give you a little bit of distance. So some of the prompts are painful, are really, really painful. So that way you can get some distance, you can get some detachment, so the experience doesn't get as intense that you feel too uncomfortable. And if playing this game makes you feel really uncomfortable, then step away, come back later. This game is not necessarily about fun, but it will never, ever should be about being hurt. And then you choose what age. Coming out is very different when you're a teenager than when you are a 50 or 60-year-old man who's been living in the closet all his life. It's a very, very different experience. So if you have something in mind already, you can go ahead and play that character. There are no stats, there is no character sheets, there's no need for any of that. Because at the end of the day, you're playing a person. However, if you feel like inspiration is not coming to you, then I've created a few tables where you roll your dice. And those tables are going to tell you what the age of your character, who are their parents, if they have any, do they have family, do they have children, are they working, are they going to school, what kind of city do they live in, is it a big town, is it a small town, what's the economic status? Do they are very wealthy? Are they very poor, living from one day to the next? What kind of person are you? Because I feel we also need to acknowledge that coming out when you live in a white, progressive, wealthy area of town is very different than when you are poor and you live in the margins, or if you live in a racialized area. Very, very different. So this is the sort of thing that you need to think about, what is it like for a Black man to come out compared to a white Harvard student from a wealthy family? Those experiences are not going to be the same. Not the weight of the experiences and the weight of the situations around you is going to be very, very different.
And when you were starting to think about this game, how much did you draw upon your own personal experiences and then maybe experiences of folks that you've met over the years that have like maybe shared their stories with you? And how did that kind of play into the creation of like the tables and like how you structured the game?
A lot. Not most, but an awful lot of the prompts that are in the game are based on my own experiences. For me, coming out, I always say that coming out is an ongoing process. Anytime that you tell somebody I'm gay, or that they realize that you're gay, you're coming out to that person because they didn't know. But there are pivotal moments in the life of a gay person when you come out to your friends, to your family, especially to your family. It's a very, very delicate time. And in my case, it was incredibly traumatic. It was really, really bad. And when I wanted to, make this game, I thought, what was it like for me building up to be able to tell people? Because at one point, I had to come out to myself. I had to stop pretending that I was going to be straight, that I was going to have a girlfriend and a family, because having girlfriends really was not making me happy at all. But having male lovers was making me very, very happy. So I had to decide, my God, this is enough. You are gay. Get over it. And once that happens, that need to live as myself starts to develop. But of course, you need to be very vigilant because you live in a homophobic place. So you begin to think about, how do people react when somebody comes out as gay on television? Like when, for example, George Michael came out as a gay man, he was found. What do people react like? Because that's going to give you a sense of safety or a sense of danger. That's going to tell you, maybe you can tell that person, but not those two. What happens when somebody else comes out? What happens when somebody insults people like that? What happens when somebody comes to you and tells you, hey, I know that you're gay, you're fine? You become hyper vigilant. And those are the things that I wanted to bring to this game. That kind of situation that make you aware of when you can say something or not. And some of those situations are always going to be very painful. So I wanted to give two things. One was pride points, and the other one is fear points. Pride points, because those are the things that really cement that it is okay to be who you are. There's nothing wrong with you. You are fine, and you reinforce yourself. You become happier with yourself. And then it's the fear points, which is when something leaves a scar in you. Somebody that you tell and they react badly, and it's somebody that you hoped was going to be your ally and it isn't. And that is incredibly painful. So at the end, if you manage to get enough points to come out, there are always going to be scars left behind. There's going to be pain somewhere, because the experience is never, ever, always positive.
Have you had friends play test this and share their experiences with you?
Yes, I have shown it to some Facebook friends who very kindly told me, hey, Paco, you need to put more emphasis on this. You need to develop this a little bit more. I showed to some gay friends who thought this is going to be really traumatic. But when they were playing it, it was like, yeah, this very much mimics my experience. And the straight people who've tried, they all come up with, I never thought of this. I never thought that somebody in his 50s was going to have it harder than somebody in their 20s. That somebody who's already married and has children is going to be insanely hard to get, the courage to come out. Very, very hard. So it has been very good food for thought for a lot of people already.
And I mean, one of the things that I really value about role-playing games, and there's always that like huge divide of narrative and whatever OSR, and you get into all that kind of stuff. But one of the things that I love about role-playing games is, and same with like any fiction stories, that you feel you have empathy towards that, the main character's point of view or your character's point of view when you're playing a role-playing game, and being able to be put into situations to go, well, how would I react to the surroundings in a safe environment that I can, it's, somewhat controlled. Obviously there's always, with some games there could be trigger warnings and there could be like lines and veils and that kind of thing. But when you're able to be a character in that safe space of the game with people that you're able to play with, and in this case more like an individual journaling game, it allows you to really peer into the world of a character and feel that empathy, which I'm sure every role-playing game player has always felt, that they really feel a connection and a bond with the character that they're playing. Have you had friends that have played the game that maybe even weren't role-playing game players, and then like that was almost a new experience for them, as well as the underlying tones and the goals of the game?
Yeah, because there's a massive difference between playing a game like Closet and playing a game like D&D or Call of Cthulhu, and is that these are real experiences. No D&D character goes through a real experience. You may care for that character very much, and you may care for what happens to that character, but at the end, you don't know anybody who's been killed by dragon breath. It doesn't exist. But you will know people who have remained in the closet for years because they didn't dare coming out, because they didn't have the support network to come out. You know somebody who had to go through some of these situations before you found out that they were gay. So these experiences, the difference is that they are real. They happen to somebody every single day of our lives. So yeah, that gives a little bit more gravitas to the experience, I think.
Yeah. Well, I'm interested to see, do you have a plan for like when the final release is and rolling it out?
Yes, I'm going to do a Kickstarter campaign for this game, and all the funds that I managed to accrue after tax, because unfortunately in Kickstarter doesn't allow you to run a charity project. You can run a project that you can donate your funds to charity, but unfortunately taxation comes in and they tax you as if you are a company. So all the money we make outside taxes is going to be given to the It Gets Better project. It's a non-for-profit that I am very, very fond of. That's been going on for, since 2010, I think, 2009, something like that. A very long time. I found out about them when I was living in Chicago in 2011. And I think they do fantastic work. Really, really work. Really, really good. And they have this beautiful message of hope, that wait until tomorrow. It gets better. It really gets better. So all the money that we make through Kickstarter is going to go for them, but also the reproduction rights of the physical book is going to go for them, so they can translate it into other languages, so they can sell it. They can do with the book whatever they want. So they can, I don't know, I just want to give them something back, because they give so much to our community.
Oh, that's great. And do you have a time frame for when you think it's going to be on Kickstarter?
Yeah, the June month. It's going to be through the whole month of Pride Month is going to be there, gathering the money. Then there will be a late pledge time. And the idea is to finalize the illustrations and the layout between July and August. We will try to do it sooner than that. Luana is working really hard, as quickly as she possibly can. And then in September, we will do the print test. It's going to be delivered through drive-through. And one thing that's important is that only the backers are going to get the drive-through link to make the physical copy. Any other physical copies is going to depend on whether the It Gets Better project publishes and prints it. The PDF will be available, but the physical is just going to be for Kickstarter backers.
Oh, terrific. I'm going to make sure that we have the links to everything so that folks can be on the list to be notified when it launches. And Pride Month, perfect timing to do it, obviously. So Paco, I really appreciate you coming on, sharing your story, sharing this game with folks. And I think it's, as role-playing games go, like, it's always nice to build empathy, understanding, and just that's the magic of role-playing games. It allows you to do that.
I agree, and thank you very, very much indeed for having me. It is truly and very, very truly genuinely appreciated.